After Jew hater Rashida Tlaib's anti-Israel event in Congress was canceled last week, Bernie Sanders invited the whole shebang over to the Senate. Then the United Nations had the audacity to hold the same type of event, all to mark the catastrophe of the founding of the State of Israel, sympathizing and even siding with Israel's enemies. I'm Luke, and this is the Israel Guys. Hello and welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. Guys, we're going to dive into the world that is going nuts over what they call Nakba Day, which is not even celebrate is the wrong term, but is marking the founding of the State of Israel, except instead of being a good thing, they're marking it as a catastrophe. Quickly, two announcements before we dive in. One is that you should sign up. This is the last chance to sign up for the Special Ops volunteer program, specifically for young people ages 18 to 35, happening June 13th to July 25th. Last chance right now to sign up. We have a team of 20 to 25 people that are in the works of being put together. But if you want to sign up for that amazing adventure-filled volunteer program, go to serveisrael.com/volunteer. Link down in the description below. Second announcement is you guys should go subscribe. And if you and hit the notification bell and drop us a comment down below if you are a new viewer. If you're listening, hit subscribe on whatever platform you listen to. So last week I talked about Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who is a blatant, outspoken anti-Semite, who has even been banned from entering the State of Israel. That's how much of an anti-Israel person she is. Under Israeli law, she was banned from entering the country. So last week I talked about how she was getting ready to hold a Nakba Day event in Capitol Hill in Congress. Well, thankfully, Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy canceled her event, citing her anti-Semitism, which is just a fancy word for Jew hatred, citing her actual Jew hatred towards Israel. So he canceled her event. Then, would you believe it, Senator Bernie Sanders stepped in, saved the day, and he invited the whole event over to the Senate, and they actually held a Nakba Day event. The Nakba, well, first of all, I'll start with this quote by Rashida Tlaib on Twitter. After the event, there was a whole interview with, I think, MSNBC, which was a horrific, filled with propaganda, and some of it was outright lies. We'll put those links down below if you want to check it out. But she was being interviewed. Her comment on Twitter was this, quote, "The Nakba is a well-documented historical event that is being commemorated by the United Nations today." Get into that in just a second. "True peace can only be built on truth and justice." Now, I'm going to get into what they think the Nakba is, or what the meaning of that is. It's what in the world is Nakba Day? But I just want to mention, Rashida Tlaib says the Nakba is a well-documented historical event. Well, I want to mention what is an actual historical event that's being marked on the same exact day. And that is the founding of the nation of Israel. 75 years ago exactly, Israel was founded as a nation in 1948. That's a historical event, and that's an event just like so many other nations around the world have been founded. But what's special about Israel is they were refounded after 2,000 years of being gone from their homeland. But before we get into what the Nakba is, another Twitter user, Dove Waxman, said, quote, "Today is Nakba Day, when the Palestinians commemorate their forced displacement and collective dispossession during the 1948 war. Contrary to some claims, it is not anti-Semitic to remember and recall the catastrophe that happened to Palestinians in 1948, even if it conflicts with the collective narrative held by many Jews in Israel and the diaspora. Palestinians are entitled to mourn their tragedy, just as Jews are entitled to celebrate Israel's establishment in 1948. So his point here is that obviously we know Israel was founded in 1948, and the Palestinians are mourning Nakba Day as their chance to mourn the fact that they were displaced from the land of Israel in 1948, and some of them even left and went to other countries. Well, I have two thoughts on that, and then I'll tell you exactly what Nakba Day is. maybe they can mourn the fact that they lost. If you are two nations going at war and one side lost, yeah, maybe you have the right to mourn that and be sad about that. But after 75 years, it seems to me like maybe you should work on moving on. The second thing is that these exact same people, Palestinian Arab people, constantly attack Israel. They try to murder Jews, and they advocate for the destruction and the eradication of Israel and constant jihad, actual violence against the Jewish people and the nation of Israel. So, no, you don't have the right to mark the so-called catastrophe of being displaced by Israel if you continue to advocate jihad and violence against one specific people group and the absolute eradication. They want to wipe Israel off the face of the map. So, what is Nakba Day? The Palestinians, Nakba means literally the catastrophe. So Israel is marking their 75th birthday, their 75th anniversary from 1948 being founded as a nation until today, 75 years. The Palestinian movement, Palestinian Arab people or movement around the world are marking this same day as Catastrophe Day. And what are they saying? They're saying the founding of the nation of Israel was an absolute catastrophe, and they're mourning the so-called displacement of Arabs that were in the region in 1948. So that's what they say happened. Here's what really happened. 1948, Israel accepted the United Nations partition plan, and the partition plan called for a Jewish state and an Arab state in this region, right? And Israel declared statehood in 1948. The Palestinians, for their part, rejected the plan. They said, we don't want a Jewish nation and we don't want an Arab nation. And 5 Arab armies declared war on Israel. The short version is that the Palestinian Arabs lost, and now they're mad. Even after 75 years, they're still mad, and they're mourning the fact that they lost. And in the process, Arabs got displaced from the region. Nakba means catastrophe. Palestinian Arabs and their sympathizers mark this day of Israel's founding as a catastrophe for the entire world. They're saying the catastrophe, the refounding of a first world democratic nation, is a catastrophe for the world. A nation that leads the world in innovation, high-tech, Nobel Peace Prize winners, science, democracy, faith, history, so much more is a catastrophe. The only nation in the world that kept their language, kept their culture, kept their ethnicity after 2,000 years of exile and returned to their same homeland. The only nation in the world that is the only nation in the world leading the world. The Jewish people in the Middle East, the only nation in the Middle East that's a first world democracy keeping this region safe. Israel is considered a catastrophe by those who hate the fact that they live in peace on the edge in the Middle East while the rest of the world, the rest of this region simmers in turmoil, oppression, and third world type situations. Israel is a beacon of hope, a shining beacon of hope. Look at all the nations that surround Israel. Do you see any other democracies surrounding the nation of Israel? Do you see any other nations that are leading the world in anything? Maybe science, innovation, technology, inventions, peace prize candidates, militaries, anything? Do you see any of the other nations that surround Israel? Who is the shining example of light? Israel. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. Israel is the only democracy that's the only democracy here that's an ally of the United States. The Palestinians that are marking this day as a catastrophe, they say hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced from their homes. What actually happened? Yes, Palestinian Arabs were displaced from their homes and their villages in 1948. Some were displaced. Many left voluntarily. Many left because they were scared, and many actually just ran and fled. There's a lot of propaganda out there. I would say, if you go to our Twitter page at the Israel Guys, you'll see the real story about Deir Yassin, a very famous propaganda-filled example. It was 100% a lie in 1948, and the lie was circulated that the Israeli army brutally massacred and attacked the Arab village of Deir Yassin. Since then, there's been actual facts come out that the whole thing was made up. But what happened from that? And you can actually watch a video with interviews by Arab leaders that tell you the truth of what actually happened on the Israel Guys Twitter page. But what happened from that? Because Arab leaders made up propaganda about the Israeli army massacring this village, Palestinians themselves in 1948 got scared and started fleeing the region. So yes, some were displaced, some left voluntarily, and some actually just fled because they were scared of what was going to happen if they stayed here. Here's the bottom line. This was war. There was a horrific war here in 1948. Israel, a tiny, tiny fledgling Jewish state that returned to their homeland, declared statehood in 1948, attacked by 5 Arab armies, including the Jordanian Legion, like a modern, equipped, trained army, trained by the British. But this was war. War is ugly. War leaves people displaced. And by the way, if you want to discuss the actual issue of refugees, Arab countries surrounding Israel in this region in the Middle East kicked out just as many Jews as Arab refugees were either displaced or fled from the region of Israel. The reality is, what did the world do with those refugees? We had Jewish refugees, Arab refugees, about the same number. Jewish refugees kicked out of Arab countries, Arab refugees that were displaced or fled from Israel. What did other countries do with those refugees? Well, Jordan and the United Nations and other countries surrounding this region, they refused to resettle the Arab refugees from the War of 1948. And until today, we still have a refugee crisis when it comes to the Palestinian Arab people, including the United Nations that perpetuates the Arab refugees. And we don't have time to even get into all that. On the contrast, on the flip side, Israel welcomed Jewish refugees with open arms, and today there's no more Jewish refugees because Israel took the nearly 1 million Jewish refugees kicked out of Arab countries, welcomed them into the state of Israel. Now there's no Jewish refugees. For example, Jordan was originally intended as a Palestinian state, and it was, the Transjordan became Jordan. That was like the original Palestinian state. Jordan could have absorbed Arab refugees from the region, and they refused to. Even to this day, they refuse to. There are Palestinian refugee camps in Jordan today. Israel 365 has written a book that every Bible believer should own in their home. We already ordered our copy, and we're excited to tell you about it. 75 Hebrew words you need to understand the Bible by our friends and partners at Israel 365 is a beautifully crafted book that explains, translates, and unlocks the hidden meanings of 75 core Hebrew words. Each word is accompanied by an in-depth essay exploring its significance, connections to related Hebrew words, and the secrets only accessible through the original language. Featuring translated and transliterated verses in their proper biblical context, stunning visuals, and an elegant design, this exceptional book is a valuable resource for Bible study, a captivating conversation starter, and an ideal gift for loved ones. Use our link in the description below to pre-order your copy today. Don't miss this opportunity. Get your copy today at a special discounted pre-order price. The book will be shipping in June 2023, so now is the perfect time to get your copy and take the first step towards unlocking the secrets of the Hebrew Bible. Click the link in the description below to pre-order your copy today. So besides the hypocrisy of the actual Nakba Day event marking the catastrophe of the state of Israel, the UN took it a step further. Last December, they passed a resolution that allows them to actually commemorate Nakba Day. And yesterday, they held their first official catastrophe event. Maybe instead of calling it Nakba, we should just start calling it catastrophe. Let's just do that. It'll be much easier to remember. So yesterday, the United Nations held their first official Nakba Day event. Now, I was researching, and from what I know, this is the first time the United Nations has actually marked the anniversary of the founding of the State of Israel, okay? And what a year to do it. Israel's 75th. It's a very big one, right? Except instead of marking Israel's birthday and throwing them a birthday party, they did the opposite, and they're holding a catastrophe day event to mark the fact that Israel's founding was a catastrophe and that Arab refugees were displaced from the region in 1948. The Palestinian Authority's Prime Minister or President, Chairman, whatever he is, Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, he spoke at the event, spewing his usual hateful rhetoric, including demanding that the United Nations suspend Israel's membership of the UN until they grant the Palestinians their own state, and also until they grant Palestinians the right to return millions of Palestinian refugees. There wasn't millions when it started, by the way. It's just that their children and grandchildren, great children, all just inherit the status of refugees. And so now that the number has actually grown. So Mahmoud Abbas says that the UN should suspend Israel's membership until they agree to make a Palestinian state and allow the right of return, refugees to return to their homes from 1948. Except the only problem is the Palestinians' definition of creating a state would be creating a state of Palestine in the entire land of Israel, and Israel being pushed into the sea, and the Jewish people leaving and going somewhere else, or maybe being killed. I don't know what, because that's what they advocate on a day-to-day basis. Mahmoud Abbas also blasted the United States and the United Kingdom, who publicly declined to participate in the event. Way to go, UK and America. Points for you guys. So Gilad Erdan is Israel's ambassador to the UN, and he had a few things to say about this event. He said, quote, "The thought that an international organization could mark the establishment of one of its member states as a catastrophe or disaster is both appalling and repulsive. I could not agree more. The United Nations treating one of its high-ranking members, their founding, their Independence Day, if you will, marking that as a disaster is absolutely repulsive." And Erdan also said that commemorating things like Nakba Day could give he said, quote, "green light to the Palestinians to continue exploiting international organs to promote their libelous narrative." And as I mentioned, the first time the UN actually is marking Israel's birthday, they're marking it as an absolute catastrophe. And they're publicly siding with Israel's enemies, which is absolutely crazy because, as Gilad Erdan said, this will give a green light to Palestinians to continue exploiting their narrative and possibly lead to more actual violence against the Jewish people and the nation of Israel. Thankfully, the silver lining is that Gilad Erdan and his office worked very hard to discourage member countries from participating in the catastrophe event at the United Nations. And 45 UN member nations abstained, including the US, UK, Canada, Ukraine, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Greece, Guatemala, Italy, Peru, and other European and African nations. And on the flip side, the hashtag End Jew Hatred movement also held a rally last night outside the UN to protest the anti-Semitic Nakba Day event. I saw a video on Twitter of a truck with a digital screen with hashtag End Jew Hatred and more. And Twitter user Brooke Goldstein said, quote, "Spotted now in front of the UN and in anticipation of our protest. We will not be silent in the face of Jew hatred. The time for Jews to live with their head down is over. Nakba Day is a call for genocide, and we will not allow it to take place without pushback." They're 100% correct. Nakba Day is a call for genocide, and people like Rashida Tlaib, people like Bernie Sanders, and the entire United Nations should be absolutely ashamed of themselves for publicly siding with the only democracy in the Middle East, a shining example nation, the Jewish nation that is leading the world in so many areas it would be impossible to count them. And these people, these anti-Israel, Jew-hating people and organizations are publicly coming against this incredible nation and publicly siding with a people and a movement that daily call for Israel's destruction and for the Jewish people to be killed and murdered. Guys, let us know what you think down in the comments below. What do you think about Nakba Day? Don't forget to subscribe and get that conversation going. And as always, tune out the fake news and tune into what is actually happening here in the land of Israel. We're here every Monday through Friday with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.